Thank you. Thank you, first of all, for having me here at this TEDx lecture here at IIT Delhi. I checked with the organizers at the start whether TEDx rules apply, that you can't have interaction and whether you've got to stick to a fixed time. I'll stick to the fixed time, that I promise, but I thought we'd divide the 18 minutes between 12 minutes of talk and 6 minutes of questions, if there are questions. Being good IITians, maybe at 10 or 11 minutes, you can be like a camera person and tell me it's time to wind up. Or I'm going to look at my watch and try and see I can get the 10 minutes right. The road not taken. You know, it's a good topic to do at a time that we are doing it because not too far away from here in Allahabad, there is the Mahakumbh. 12 years ago, I recall going to the Mahakumbh and meeting, it's a unique, it's a remarkable festival, religious gathering, but much more than that, the sheer diversity of people that you meet at the Mahakumbh it's Hinduism and India in all its spiritual and diverse glory in a way. So there was this one American who I happened to meet there who called himself, I think, Baba Muni or something. He was part of the Juna Akhada. And I asked him what he was doing he was somewhere Connecticut or somewhere. Why was he here at the Kumbh Mela and wearing his saffron robes? And he said that he'd once been an investment banker and had finally decided he'd had enough of investment banking and decided that he was going to discover his inner being. Now, he wasn't quite the monk who sold the Ferrari, but he said that one day I went to a mall and I looked around myself and I saw no one really smiling. And I realized that the world that I was in wasn't really the world I wanted to be in. So he sold all his wealth, he says, gave a lot of it to charity and became a Muni and eventually was there at the Kumbh Mela. I tell his story because, there are a number of people around the world who, not all of us can be monks who sold the Ferrari, but a number of us who are willing to make career changes, to effect changes in lifestyle, to really move towards a higher calling. When I refer to the words the road not taken, I don't think it's just in terms of professional choices. It's in terms of what you decide to do as a higher calling. Then whether it is journalism, whether it is law, whether it is politics, whether it is engineering, whether it's banking, because most IITians, it appears, want to be bankers. I was just telling someone that the road not taken for an IITian is to remain an engineer. But that's another aside. But it's the question of a higher calling. You join politics not because you want to make money, but you join politics because you want to really make a difference to public life. You should join journalism not because you want television rating points or you are in some box office battle. You should join journalism because you believe that through your stories, through your opinions, you can make a difference to make India a better place. You join laws not because you're going to charge 5 lakhs for every 5-minute adjournment that you get, but you join law because you have faith in the concept of justice. You become an entrepreneur, you become a businessman, not because you simply want to again, have 5 cars and have a wonderful lifestyle, but because you believe that as an entrepreneur, you can actually provide gainful employment to hundreds and thousands of people. It is the higher calling which is the road not taken, in my view. It's not just the professional choices you make, because at the end of the day, a lot of us, not all of us are lucky like Suhas to make those decisions at 10 and 12, but we go through an education system, we train ourselves, gear ourselves to a particular education. It's difficult to completely move away from the professional choices that we've made, but once you've made those professional choices, do you treat that as a higher calling or simply as something, chalo yaar chalte hain, karte hain, and follow the path that others are following? Including in my profession. To give my example, I started life with the idea that I would be a lawyer. I trained in Oxford to do international law. I should have been, at the moment, perhaps arguing for India at the ICJ, perhaps against Pakistan on the killings on the LOC, and taking up human rights violations done in different parts of the world. As it turned out, I returned partly for family reasons, But eventually, because when I came back and started practicing at the Bombay High Court, I felt this was too much of work. And I wasn't being paid much for it either. So when I got an opportunity to be an assistant editor at the Times of India, because Times of India still had a colonial mindset that if you came from Oxford, you were immediately an assistant editor. So it seemed good, and I decided, well, let's do it. And one thing led to another. It was an exciting time. I was passionate about current affairs. It was the era of Mandal, Mandir market, the late 80s, early 90s. And you just went with the wind. But you went where your heart really took you. I don't think at any stage, and really, frankly, in the last 25 years, I have treated journalism as a 9-to-5 job. You can't. It is a passion, it's a calling, I hope. And that's what really drives you day after day. Television happened to me in 1994. Frankly, the idea of a 24/7 channel was unheard of. Nobody had, the first time I met Prannoy Roy in 94 at NDTV, he said, we're starting up one program that we're going to do of half an hour. At that time, he did World This Week, and it seemed a nice little program to do. We had 1 week to travel to some part of the world, do one story and come back. The idea of a 24/7 channel seemed absurd. I remember when first time Dr. Roy told me that we've now been told to become a 24/7 channel. I said, sir, you must be crazy. What are we going to fill these 24 hours with news? Now sometimes I realize I was right, because that's why we fill a lot of that news with rubbish. Or a lot of others fill it with rubbish. But just the fact that at the time, it seemed an absurd idea. To the point where, there was just Doordarshan, and there was the odd private program that you had. Today, this country, as in most things, Guinness Book of World Records, most number of 24/7 channels in the world. In every language, everywhere you go, you have TV all over. 20 years ago, when one got into this field, frankly, it was, it seemed a crazy thing to do. But you follow your heart, you go along with it, but importantly, you stay loyal to your conscience. So I think in the road not taken, one of the challenges that we all face is, to what extent are we going to compromise with our ethics? To what extent do we see our professional calling as a larger mission, if I may use the word, but in some way trying to make a difference to the world? It's very easy today in my profession, for example, to fill news with noise, to fill news with sensationalism, to fill news with trivia. It can get you rating points. It might even be a more commercially viable option. But is that the reason why you became a journalist? Is a question I often ask young people. Is that what you want to do with journalism? I think the challenges that we all face today is, how do we make our professional choices where we are able to compromise less and be ethically resilient? Because it is becoming increasingly difficult in the world to take the road not taken. We have traditionally, our parents teach us to be a risk-averse society. I remember when I told my parents that I wanted to be a journalist, my first reaction from my parents was, then why did you go to Oxford? It was almost as if the moment you went to Oxford, there was something else that you should be doing with your life. You've gone there, struggled, done a law degree, done international law, and then you come back and you sit in the Times of India office. Didn't seem worth it. And we were paid 1,500 rupees, I remember at the time, in my first job at the Times of India, and the general manager looked at me almost as if he was doing me a favor by giving me 1,500 rupees, because he said, but you're working for the Times of India. So that, you see, you then have to overcome societal prejudices. You have to overcome the fact that you live in a risk-averse society and yet be able to take the road not taken. It's not easy. But I believe that it provides you somewhere a sense of inner resilience. It comes from time to time. In 2004, I could have very easily, honestly, I was enjoying NDTV. It was a great place. I was paid well. Life was lovely. You moved from one story to the other. And suddenly one day, someone made this offer that, why don't you start your own channel? I'll financially bankroll it or support it. I thought a bit. I was very reluctant to do it, and I shared it with a colleague, and he said, no, it's not a bad idea, otherwise you'll end up being a potted plant in this office. And just the idea of remaining in the same place for the next 20 years of my life, I thought, well, if I have to take a risk, why not at 40? I was 40, and I believe life begins at 40. So in a sense, every 10 years in life, you've got to take risks. So this was the 40-year-old risk. I need to take another one a couple of years from now. But the idea of doing something on your own excited me. The idea of setting up your own channel with your own vision excited me. And frankly, I haven't regretted it for a single day. I think it's given me far more in terms of being able to understand myself and the people around me. Because when you become some kind of an entrepreneur, or when you set up an independent startup venture, you work with people with the knowledge that you are no longer working for yourself, but you're working for every individual in that team. You know, TV journalism is often defined by the face that you see. But frankly, TV journalism is the ultimate team game. You're only as good as your camera person, your editor, your producer, all of whom often come from different backgrounds. And just coming together and building a team of people who come from diverse backgrounds is a hugely exciting adventure. And I've always believed, like possibly that Muni who I met in the Kumbh Mela did, that life is an adventure. You've got to see life as an adventure. You've got to see it as a journey. Honestly, I know it sounds almost like one of these Americans throwing these thoughts at you, but the fact is that the greatest pleasure you get in life is the journey. At the Kumbh itself, one Naga sadhu told me this. He said there are different kinds of happiness, my friend. And one form of happiness is that you've had a great meal, you've seen a great movie, and you feel like you do a little bit more than your body and your mind is allowing you. You're climbing a mountain, and those last 100 meters as you're trying to reach the summit, the struggle and the effort that you put in, just that journey is the ultimate form of happiness. It's not so much reaching the summit, but it's the journey that you take to the summit, because not all of us can reach summits. Our society sometimes decides winners and losers only on the basis of who reaches the summit, without taking enough into account of just the journey that you take to try in your own small way to continue to strive to reach the summit. And I think that Naga sadhu was perhaps wiser than all of us, because what he told me that day has always stuck in my mind, that it's just the striving and the journey that you take. Possibly the road not taken in this case, possibly a tougher road with a lot of bumps, but a road that you stick by and just enjoy the idea of just, of just keeping on in a particular way, trying to become a better person, trying to climb a higher peak. And I think that's the excitement, because people often ask me, what keeps you going? All you do is news day after day, year after year. And you just say that, the great thing about journalism, or indeed life, is no 2 days are ever the same. Particularly true of journalism. No 2 days are ever the same. And that's the excitement that should really drive you towards greater fulfillment. I remember, and that's the best story, and I'll end with that, about why journalism, no 2 days are ever the same. We were at, I think it was sometime in the month of December of 2001. And it was a lovely, glorious early winter day. My camera person and I were in Parliament. It was a Friday. And he said, sir, Friday में कुछ होता नहीं है Parliament में. वो सब adjournment हो जाएगा, सब घर जाते हैं. Sir, हम भी चलते हैं. I said, what do you plan? He said, नहीं sir, आज press club में कुछ, there's some new guy who's brought some biryani or korma करते हैं. I'll also organize something and we'll go there. And we'll have sir, मैंने एक wine की bottle भी organize की है. तो मैंने कहा, sounded good. 11:30 in the morning on a Friday. Life didn't seem too bad. And within 5 minutes of the conversation that we'd had, preparing ourselves for a wonderful day, we heard a gunshot. And for the next 24 hours, all we were doing is reporting a terror attack on Parliament. And it just convinced me that, life, you never know what life will bring you next in various forms. It can be personal adversities. It can be just the circumstance in which your profession puts you in. But it's exciting and it's an adventure. So as long as you treat life as an adventure, you will always be tempted to take the road not taken. And I would encourage all of you, in your own small way, if you believe engineering is the road not taken, take it. And you might find great joy in it. Thank you very much.
I would now like to invite questions from the audience.
Yes.
Hi, you talked about, following one's calling, but for many of us, once you get a calling or once you get a certain urge, okay, following the calling can be difficult because of society's restraints and all. But how do you even identify the calling? Like you can take someone who's just graduating from IIT Delhi, and like how, and he doesn't really have a clue about the world, like what he wants to do truly. So how do you identify that calling eventually? What happens?
It's something that will come, only you and your conscience will wrestle with it, and one day suddenly decide this is what I want to do. I agree with you that it's not easy. But I'm saying even if you make a professional choice, let's assume that you decide like a good IITian to become a banker, right? Why are you becoming a banker? What is the purpose of banking? Is it simply that I want to have that, Merc in my in my garage, or do I just want to be the first multimillionaire from wherever I am? Or is it that I believe that through all that I'm going to do in my banking world, I'm in some way going to contribute to making India a better place? That's the point. I'm just saying that whatever you do, or be a very good banker, be an ethical banker. There can be unethical bankers and there can be ethical bankers. When I say the road not taken, to my mind, in today's India, the road not taken is to be ethical as far as possible. That is the biggest challenge of India. Everything else, to my mind, doesn't matter. So that doesn't require you to go through any inner introspection about what is the road I want to take and all that. What is my higher calling? The higher calling is, I believe genuinely as a journalist, all I can do is when I go home, when I sleep by my pillow and I'm with myself and my conscience, have I been honest to my conscience? Because often, today, for example, in journalism, there's this whole charge, bias. If you don't agree with my point of view, you'll call me biased. At the end of the day, I have to deal with my own opinion or the way I perceive a story. Have I been honest to myself? So whether you become a banker or whether you become a journalist or anything, have I been honest with myself? According to me, that is the road not taken, unfortunately, in the Indian context. To just be ethical, which say 50 years ago you would have treated as natural. But today, to be ethical in your profession is almost treated as exceptional, which is why I see it as the road not taken. Yes. Let's be honest, it's not easy. You face multiple challenges. It's happened in the past that you might not report the story exactly the way you want. The pressures may be there, but they're grossly exaggerated. According to me, this whole thing of major pressures on you to report a story, frankly, are not there to the extent that they should be. I do believe that most journalists, if they do the right thing, the pressures automatically wilt away. But we've seen in the past, it required an Arvind Kejriwal, for example, to end the omerta silence that existed on a Robert Vatra. Frankly, most of us knew what was happening. We didn't have enough evidence, to be honest. And Arvind Kejriwal can get away, which we can't. It's easier for someone in public life to make accusations. It's much more difficult for me in journalism to do so. But you live with it. I was at a book release the other day, and Mr. Amar Singh, the Samajwadi Party leader, was there. He got up suddenly and said, "You are responsible for sending me to jail." This is which was responsible for the cash for vote story. And we carried the story 20 days later because we wanted to get all the facts together. We got killed from both sides. The BJP said, you're not airing the story fast enough. And the Congress said, who the hell are you to try and do a sting along with the BJP? So I said, if both sides are upset with me, and the man who eventually went to jail then comes in a public gathering and says, you sent me to jail, good enough. So there are all kinds of pressures, but you live with, according to me, the worst kind of pressures, to be very honest, are corporate. In this country, corporates get away with much more than politicians do. Political pressures you can deal with. Corporate pressures, frankly, and I'm being very honest to you, are much more difficult to deal with than political pressures. So to do a story on a corporate requires much more courage today than to do a story on a politician.
What a best way to protest in this scenario? Like we seen the Nivea case last month. And there are lots of ways, like we use Facebook, Twitter, there are Ramdev's way, there are Ina's way, Kejriwal's way, and there are politicians' way. They walk over from the parliament. So what youngsters follow?
Look, I don't know. I'm uncomfortable with all. Look, my job is to tell stories. I will tell the story of Ramdev, tell the story of Kejriwal, tell the story of parliamentarians walking out. For me, at the end of the day, I think all I can do is tell the story without being too judgmental. But I have a huge problem with this politics, which at times can be anarchic. At the end of the day, it's all very well to protest, but along with protest, we need to start offering solutions. There's a lot of anger, legitimate, lot of rage, lot of protest, all legitimate. But are we offering enough solutions to make to change the system? It's one thing to stand up on a rostrum and say sab chor hai. It's a much more difficult thing to do is to say how are you actually going to change the system. So I'm actually looking more towards people who will give me recipes for change rather than recipes for anger, frankly. 2 minutes.
Sir, media has a great role in our society. The Anna Hazare movement, media was not there. It couldn't have been so popular. In Nirbhaya's case, people were so mobilized. As you said, that making 24-hour news channel is very difficult. Suppose after a match, I see 4 cricketers sitting discussing about the match. This went wrong, that went wrong. I know that it doesn't make sense. Sitting, listening to this doesn't make sense, but still I feel interested to see. So I think I think you might be agreeing that there are many ways we can, glorify. There are many ways to glorify our country. There are also good things happening in our country which has happened in our past. So I think, personally, I think that there is a scope of, showing those things to the people, making it more interesting for people.
Sure. We have a program on CNN IBN now. We run it through the year called India Positive. Every day we do one positive story. We put it together, do half-an-hour program, and we've done something called Real Heroes, where we identify every year 24 real heroes, anonymous Indians doing extraordinary. I agree with you. There's too much of negativism. More than that, frankly, you may like to watch these shows with 4 cricketers, but the idea of a cricket match being over and then journalists call it match ka mujrim. I find it appalling. I find the way in which, frankly, the quality of debates and the quality of issues that we take on, frankly, is going lower and lower. We are hitting the lowest common denominator. And frankly, that's, instead of raising the bar, we are lowering the bar. How to get people to talk the most idiotic things. In fact, if someone talks in a sane voice, nobody wants to listen to him. You want people to scream, to screech. Otherwise, you feel that the person is not exciting, dramatic TV. And I think, if we continue in this path, I've often said this, that in the last 10 years, what has happened? Journalists are more feared today than ever before. We have more impact. We are less respected. There's a difference between being feared and being respected. People fear us more. People respect us less. This is my personal view. And I think that is because we have been accomplices in our own downfall. By reaching out to the lowest common denominator, by treating news and journalism like box office. News and television journalism cannot be decided by 1 week ratings. It has to be decided on the basis of the news that you provide. And I agree with you. There are a lot of great positive stories to be told. And the more we do it, the more you can inspire people to perhaps follow those paths.
One more question, sir. I think in your career as a journalist, there would have been moments where you might be knowing that this is wrong. Then again, as a journalist, you had to be neutral. So how much frustrating it is, to be neutral, but
you don't have to be neutral. You have to tell the story as it is. I'll give you one quick example before I conclude. The 2002 Gujarat riots. One reported a story as one saw it, and one was critical of the way it was handled. That doesn't mean that I have been accused as a result of being anti-Narendra Modi. I don't care. My basic thing was I told the story as I saw it at the time. 10 years later, he may do some good work. I will praise him. But enough, you see, neutrality is in the eyes of the beholder. Or bias is more importantly, bias is in the eyes of the beholder. You have a particular perception of an individual and an event. If my perception or the way I tell the story doesn't suit yours, people don't like it. People tell me, "Arey, you only covered 2002, why didn't you cover 84? I said, in 84 I was a college student. But nahi, aapne wo nahi kiya tha. Boss, we can keep going on and debating this endlessly. and we will reach no solution. At the end of the day, you are, we come back to it, you have to be honest to yourself and your conscience. Have you told the right story? Then neutrality, bias, these are all concepts in the eye of the beholder. End of the day, you have to be honest to the story that you're telling. One last question, because we've completely run out of time. One last question. Yes, the gentleman at the back. You won't be. You'll have to.
You might just want to shout out the
You'll
question.
have to shout out your question. Yes. A lawyer. Journalism. TV. Yes. You see, in the 10 years making take, yeah. You see, my worry, I will not do that. I am not interested in becoming PM, or particularly PM where Sonia Gandhi is the Congress president. That's ruled out. And B, at the end of the day, there are two things that you need to be in public life. That I've realized that, one thing certainly that you need to be in public life. You need to have a very thick skin. And most of us, frankly, who've come through a middle class India, as I call it, find it very difficult to have a thick skin. Because, the slightest criticism, and we get worried. And you have to be ready to compromise. I'm sure that's true of the government, it's true of all professions, as I said. You're often being pushed into corners, being asked to compromise. The beauty of compromise is what Mahatma Gandhi once called it, but he said it in a very different context. Today I call it the ugliness of compromise. And I don't want to compromise. I'm very happy, therefore, in whatever you do, try to avoid the kind of compromises with your personal ethics. That's about all that you can try and aspire to. So, becoming the Prime Minister of the country with Sonia Gandhi as President would require a thick skin and a lot of compromises, neither of which I want to do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We would like to present a memento.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. With the growing role of media in all our lives, we are indeed thankful that we have you in